Hello, New Mexico, and welcome to another episode of Around the Roundhouse, a podcast featuring the policies, politics, and personalities of the land of enchantment from our beautiful state capital here in Santa Fe and beyond. My name is Daniel Chacón, and I'm the State House reporter for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our guest this week is Jason Riggs, advocacy and public policy director at the Roadrunner Food Bank in Albuquerque. The Roadrunner Food Bank is one of 5 primary food banks in New Mexico that are bracing for a possible freeze in SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, commonly known as food stamps, as a result of the federal government shutdown. Jason, thank you for joining us today to discuss this very timely and pressing issue.
No problem. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Let's kick things off with what this means for New Mexico. What does the possibility of SNAP running out in November mean for New Mexico, which has the highest SNAP participation rate in the country?
Well, at the food bank, all 5 food banks are preparing for a situation similar to what we had to do during the Great Recession, and that's when I started at the food bank. And similar to how it was, particularly in the first year of COVID-19, we are gearing up for an absolute public health crisis. The comparisons end there. During the recession and COVID-19, we had a fully functioning SNAP program, albeit flawed, but nonetheless, the program was doing what it was designed to do, provide a huge safety net that expands when the economy's in trouble. This time, we don't have a SNAP program. That's the cause of the crisis.
And exactly what are food banks doing to prepare for this possibility?
Everything we can. This is tough. So, let's back up a little bit. New Mexico is one of the most food insecure states in the country. Food insecurity is kind of a clinical term. We have people that are hungry, people that can't just plan out a week of meals because they're not sure where those are going to come from. So we already have a rough situation in New Mexico that food banks are trying to respond to, and it's a continuous, never-ending thing. Then in July, HR 1, the OBBBA, made historic and unprecedented cuts to SNAP. It cut the amount of people that are eligible for it, and longer lasting cuts that'll affect the state economy, possibly looking at 58,000 New Mexicans based on some estimates losing SNAP, possibly more seeing a huge reduction. So we already have that crisis happening. And now here we are approaching late October, and we have a government shutdown and SNAP funds not going out for the month of November. So it's kind of a triple crisis going on right now.
Jason, may I ask if you can offer some specifics in terms of what food banks are doing? Are they reaching out to folks in the community? Are you all, buying more food in anticipation of this potential freeze?
Well, so I like to preface this by saying, there's not usually a 5th gear that food banks can kick into around the country in order to deal with this. We're already dealing with the crisis of food insecurity in our state. That being said, after the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and in response to that, the New Mexico State Legislature set up some funding for food banks in response to that crisis. So right now the state is trying to greenlight the funds to move faster so we can prepare to buy more food quickly. So we are trying to do that. We're already planning things out. We're already seeing at our own food pantry on our site in Albuquerque. We're already seeing an increase in the number of people visiting. So we are going to be increasing those hours, and it is tough. I mean, food banks operate on a network of small entities, smaller entities. So it can be anything from a lot of our faith-based institutions that we partner with. So we literally have volunteers running those sites that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. That's the average age of our volunteers. and they're seeing their lines grow. So it's so much more than just the food banks in New Mexico getting ready or geared up for this. We've been trying to prepare for this as best we can. We want to get more food to our partner agencies. We have the New Mexico Food Bank Network has over 500 partners across the state, again, ranging from faith-based institutions to community centers, senior centers, schools. But it's also a question of capacity. If we can get more food, which we're trying, how much more capacity can we get it through our warehouse? How much more can we get it to our partners, who may be a small church social hall that has a couple of shelves and a refrigerator? So food banking is a really complex logistical equation.
And Jason, you mentioned this, that the legislature had a special session to deal with some of these looming federal cuts that are coming as a result of the federal budget reconciliation bill. But did I hear you correctly that are you saying that New Mexico might be able to fast track those funds? Because those funds were to deal with the longer term reconciliation cuts as opposed to the shutdown. I mean, again, can the state fast track those funds, and what kind of discussions have food banks have the food banks have had with the administration of Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham?
Well, we mostly work through the healthcare authority, and of course I can't speak for the state, but yeah, the folks we're talking to, they're concerned about that. They understand the situation, and we're trying to move those funds quickly. And of course we're already purchasing more and more food as much as we can. So it is in motion. However, it should be said that SNAP can provide 9 times the amount of meals as the entire nationwide food bank network. And so again, we're kind of operating in a situation where there is no SNAP program to provide a safety net. So much different thing than what one would expect.
Excluding the shutdown, give us an idea of how many people the Roadrunner Food Bank in Albuquerque serves, either on a daily or a weekly basis. Tell us about the food bank itself and the work it does.
Sure. Well, it started in 1979. We distribute government commodities known as TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program. We distribute those to all 4 of our sister food banks. And then we directly serve most of central and all of southern New Mexico. So we're really a statewide organization, and we work closely with the Food Depot in your town of Santa Fe that serves northern New Mexico, the Food Bank of Eastern New Mexico in Clovis, Echo in Farmington, serving San Juan County, and of course the Community Pantry serving the western side of New Mexico. So it's really a huge effort. And again, food banks are kind of like warehouses or trucking companies. We procure the food, inventory the food, ship it out in our trucks, and get them to the places where people go to get the food. So when I say 500 plus partner agencies, this is all over the state. Each, different size. There's some that are almost mini food banks, and there's some that, as I described, are just a small room in the back of the church. When we last kind of audited it, we were estimating we were serving about 70,000 people a week, and that's during non-crisis times.
And Jason, you spoke about this earlier, but I was going to ask you directly: do the food banks have the capacity to handle this possible freeze and snap?
No, we do not. There's no business or organization or for-profit corporation that could possibly increase their capacity by 9 times by November 1st. Now, make no mistake, we're going to do what we do during crisis. We will be out there. We will be doing our best to get as much food as possible out to people that need it. We are responding to our community's needs, but I think it's unrealistic to expect charities to just fill this huge gap. This is an important government safety net. It is the first line of defense against hunger. It was created in the Great Depression, when our country really saw what food insecurity and extreme poverty looked like up close. It was very much improved upon in the 1970s through bipartisan legislation And it's a very powerful program. And a lot of people, especially in New Mexico, really, really count on it. And about 40%, 40% of our clients that we serve, we know them to be on SNAP as well. I remember speaking at a church food pantry, and a woman explained to me kind of in detail how she gets her staples using her SNAP money, and then comes to the food pantry to get what they give out. She really had to plan out her budget and plan out how she feeds her family. And a lot of people are in that boat.
So it sounds like folks use the food banks to supplement the assistance that they receive in SNAP. Is that what we're seeing by and large?
That's often the case. I'm putting this, in a very simple way. But SNAP benefits used to last the average household, and let's just put SNAP let's just put average in air quotes. The average household about 2 weeks. The food you'd get at a food pantry would last the average household about 2 weeks. But in addition to all those three things going on that I mentioned earlier, we also have a huge escalation in food prices. So those SNAP benefits is great a program, and as much as we believe in it at the food bank, it's those SNAP dollars aren't going as far as they used to. Kind of similar with Social Security, for that matter. And at the same time, food banks are having to purchase more and more product. We in the past, we could count on a lot of large bulk donations, and the food we purchased was usually minuscule, less than 5% of our inventory. Now 30%, 35%, it's increasing. We're not getting those bulk donations after the pandemic. A lot of places started to get more efficient with their supply line. So we didn't have the situation where there was just a lot of overstock that grocery stores may have had to move. We still do get those donations, and we're grateful for all of them, but more and more food banks around the country are planning their budgets to purchase more and more food. And I wished we had the secret charity line of where we would get food cheaply. We're competing with restaurants and grocery stores in trying to get the best prices and the most product.
Three words that you said earlier really struck a chord with me, which is public health crisis. Is the situation really that dire? Because there are folks that may not understand or may not be struggling as much. Is the situation as dire as it bordering on a public health crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. If something like 258,000 households in New Mexico suddenly, have the majority or at least half of their grocery budget cut, they're not going to be able to buy food. That's really hard to get by if, any household, if half to 75% of your grocery budget just disappeared on November 1st. It will create a crisis. We already have situations in our state where people are, even with SNAP, even with all the work our great food banks do, they're having to eat a little bit less so their kids get a little bit more. We have a lot of seniors that are, can't afford the meds, so they're going to go ahead and buy this cheaper food that's maybe high on calories but low on nutrients so that they can afford their medicine. They're going to get sicker. We just, number of scenarios there. And I think to think of it as any other way than a real emergency situation is probably not really seeing things for what they are.
Okay. When we all sort of got wind that a shutdown was happening, did you think that it would last this long and that we would see this impasse in Congress?
I had really hoped not. I feel like we've definitely had I'm not a historian, but it seems like there's been more shutdowns in my adult life than I ever remember reading about anywhere else. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just hope we would be past this, and I would hope that the idea of getting people who need food, that food would be very bipartisan. Again, SNAP was really improved in the 1970s by Senators McGovern and Senators Dole, two guys on the opposite sides of the political spectrum. But you know what? They both served their country in World War II. They may not have liked each other, but they knew that it was 100% the American thing to do to take care of your neighbor.
As you indicated, there have been shutdowns in the past. Why does this one feel different?
You're asking some questions might be a bit above my pay grade.
Mm-hmm.
I do recall the last one and how hard it was. We suddenly had to pivot to a completely different population. People that were furloughed, people didn't have a job, people that had no need for a food bank. I don't know how many calls I got around that time, and also during the recession, where the first thing people say is, "I used to give money to you guys. Now I need your help." I think the situation can really turn on a dime for any household, anybody. And, knowing that, but for the grace of God, go we, you would think people in power would be fully sympathetic to this and want to do something about it. And I think those people are there in both parties. I'm really hoping for a solution that gets people the SNAP allotments, the funds they need so that they can get groceries for their household. And I'm hoping it also doesn't involve, losing medical coverage, because again, medical coverage and food insecurity, they're both tied together. If people are given a choice between paying to see a doctor or paying for food, they're going to make a hard choice that will have an impact one way or the other.
If I understood you correctly, before we started the interview, you're on the ground in DC. Are you? What's happening at the Capitol? Or are you seeing some movement?
So yes, I am in DC. In the past few years at Roadrunner Food Bank, we've been open since 1979, like I said before. Actually, this month marks my 17th year in food banking. And, we realized that, hopefully we're getting better and more able to get more food in and to get the food out and to get the resources we need, shelving, pallet jacks. I mean, if you ever come to Roadrunner Food Bank or any food bank, what you're going to see is a big warehouse with people on forklifts and all those costs that it takes to store food and keep trucks rolling. I always tell people, food banks are a lot like a trucking company. We got to keep those big wheels rolling, and that costs money and that takes personnel. But we kind of realized, in addition to asking how are we going to get food to all these people in our line, we have to ask, why are they in our line, and what can we do to go upriver to really make a difference? And so we really expanded our advocacy work that we had always been doing. I mean, the minute you see someone that needs help with food and you do something to connect them with food, you're advocating for that individual. So the advocacy is nothing really new, but the scope of which we're doing it has changed. And as it happens, I was invited to DC by the Food Research Action Center to come in and discuss and learn about the effects of the OBVBA on their state. And then sometime between the invitation and me flying out, the shutdown happened. So I'll be meeting with our federal delegation, their offices and their staff, and just letting them know what's going on the ground in New Mexico and what we're hearing from the people that we serve.
Okay. A freeze in SNAP benefits will obviously affect recipients directly. They'll feel it the most. But what are the ripple effects, whether it be on grocers or others who are part of that SNAP supply chain?
It's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that. Retailers in New Mexico that take SNAP EBT. So just in case people don't know, SNAP is a federal program. The money comes from the federal government. Of course, this changes in the OBBBA, but the money is sent to the states disperse it onto EBT cards, electronic balance transfer, benefits transfer. I've heard different combinations on that acronym. So folks go and they spend it in the stores. And, so there's this huge thing going to happen. If there are not funds to spend in those stores, it will have a huge impact. And the percentage of people shopping at your local grocery store, it's really hard to say, but it could be 10% of that business, depending on where you live. It could be 40%. I mean, that's the thing. How many grocery stores can take even a 10% hit, even a 5% hit, let alone, increasingly. And this will really have an acute effect in rural areas. So places where there's a kind of a local market that's, probably struggling as it is in some of our beautiful towns in New Mexico. It can really hit those rural independent grocery stores really, really hard. So I don't want to try to predict the future, but we've seen what happens when big box stores aren't making the kind of profit that the corporations expected, and that can mean layoffs, that can mean store closures. But before it even gets to that, it's people not coming into the store to buy food, and therefore, where are those meals going to come from? So there's some really long-term implications. Every dollar of SNAP is worth about anywhere from like $1.50 to $1.62 in economic impact. So to suddenly cut that off is just bad economics.
Some of the chatter that I'm seeing on social media, and I don't know if it's true, and if you might be able to answer this question, do you think that it would lead to higher grocery prices?
I hate to, if friends and family who know me heard me speculating about economics, this may turn into a comedy podcast, but it's pretty simple stuff we all learned in 6th or 7th grade. If suddenly these businesses lose an income source, a profit center, sure, I don't see why laws of supply and demand. Sure, I think prices would go up.
Okay. We've heard, at least here in Santa Fe, of restaurants offering free food to children until SNAP benefits are restored. There are there are a number of faith communities who are dedicating their Sunday collections to food banks. Are New Mexicans stepping up to the plate to help fill that gap?
I just got some information last night about some of the restaurants in Albuquerque. I'm seeing them in Roswell, Clovis. We saw this during the pandemic too, and it makes you so proud of our state and our local businesses. New Mexico is really unique. We have per capita just a lot of local restaurants, and locally owned restaurants. Not every state has that. You can come to New Mexico and, you can name your favorite pizza place and it's a local place. You can name your favorite burger. It is a local place. If you're going to get enchiladas like your grandma makes, you know where to go. We don't have, not every state has that. It's really special. And so to see these businesses, and I haven't been able to look at the list exhaustively, but the ones I recognize, they're not big chains. They're local franchises or small independent businesses, some of which they haven't even been open that long. And the statements they're putting out are just really touching the heart. So it makes me feel very proud as a New Mexican to see our local businesses stepping up like this. But they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to. This is a federal program, and it was designed to be a federal program serving the states. This is our taxpayer funds. And so this should not fall on local business to try to fill an emergency gap. And frankly, it shouldn't fall on food banks to just suddenly fill, build up capacity by 9 times and fill this gap either. Food banks are going to do our best. We're going to do what we do. We're going to hold the line.
Okay.
However, there has to be action at the federal level. These restaurants, they can't possibly go on giving out free food. I was just really, really inspired by the accounts I've read about these restaurants stepping up like this.
For sure. A couple last questions here, Jason. What do you suggest, or what advice do you give to SNAP recipients if their food benefits aren't available next month?
So I would say to people that are in need of help, you can call the Roadrunner Food Bank food assistance line at 505-349-5340. If you have a 575 area code and you're on a landline, you can call 575-523-4390, or you can go to www.rrfb.org. We have a food finder tool that works for the entire state. So if you have access to internet, go to rrfb.org, click on Get Help, and you can type in your town or your zip code anywhere in the state. All of us food banks are working together, and you can find out the place you can go and the hours that they're open. and get yourself some food.
Jason, Republicans have been blaming the Democrats, and the Democrats have been pointing the finger at Republicans over the shutdown. If we could conclude, especially with you being in DC, what's your message to members of Congress?
Well, I feel, and this is illustrated by our local restaurants putting out those notices that they're going to help your family get your kids some food. I feel like, in the U.S. we take care of our own, and we also take care of other people when we can. But that's the baseline. That is, I feel, an American value. Your neighbor needs help, you help your neighbor. So I think in our greatest moments in our history, that's what the United States did. Sometimes it's not the most exciting history. You read about how the Great Depression was mitigated. If you're like me and you worked at a food bank during the Great Recession, you witnessed some truly heroic things. I'm still trying to get past everything that happened during the pandemic and seeing just lines and lines of cars at the New Mexico State Fairgrounds, bigger distributions that I'd ever seen at that time at a food bank. And we see people step up for the neighbor all the time, and in small ways that don't get a lot of attention. It's not very heroic. So we can only hope that in Washington, D.C., that some situations get worked out and the money flows to the states where it should be going.
Okay. Well, Jason, thank you so much for not only your time, but for what you do. So thank you for joining us today. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for tuning into Around the Roundhouse. Join us every week as we talk to newsmakers in the political realm by subscribing to our podcast through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or obviously wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest developments, follow our coverage online at santafenewmexican.com. In fact, we're working on stories on this very subject right now. But you can also subscribe to our political newsletter, the Roundhouse Report, also at santafenewmexican.com. Until next time, I'm Daniel Chacón, and this has been Around the Roundhouse.